Hello, everyone. I hope that you are enjoying Global Ready Conference so far today. Thank you for joining us for our next panel discussion, How do we scale up quality management in this AI world? For this session, I'm joined by Smartling's AI and language services experts. We have Andrew Batwash, Director of Language Services, Valerie Dehan, Senior Director of Language Services, and Olga Bergova, VP of AI. So thank you all so much for joining today. Let's go ahead and get started. Olga, can you kick us off with an overview just of the state of the AI world that we live in and how it pertains to translation quality?
Yeah, we live in super exciting and super dynamic times, right? Things change daily. And what's happening to the content? First of all, we live in the era of content explosion, right? There's a ton of content. The enterprises generate more and more content. There is user-generated content. There are all sorts of content being out there. So first things first, content explosion. Second, it's AI-aided and to a great extent, AI-driven content explosion. First, for instance, we have quite a bit of machine translated content. So let's hold that thought. We'll get back to that later. But machine translation content obviously meets and requires completely different quality standards from what you would expect from human translation. Then now you have large language models that also equally generate or post-edit content. And yet again, we're dealing with completely different beasts and completely different types of errors that this content will present. So exciting times and a lot of new requirements to what quality estimation is.
Yeah, and I think like that content explosion you talked about, Olga, is going to create a whole bunch of new challenges for companies that are localizing their content, trying to reach audiences, trying to sell products and services. And it's really going to require new frameworks, in particular, in terms of how they deploy their QA dollars, right? Like I think we all expect that the content explosion is going to reduce the price of translation exponentially over the next years. But with that, and with that increase in scale of localization, companies are going to have to find ways to reduce the cost of quality management, right? That's a pretty labor intensive and high cost process now. And they're going to have to get really agile and cost effective in doing this. And one of the, good example, right? One of the things that we're pretty comfortable with now is quality levels for existing solutions, right? Like MT, MTPE. We know what the quality outputs for those are, generally speaking. As we kind of transition to these like AI aided or AI generated localization solutions, the quality levels, at least in the short term, are going to be a lot more unpredictable. And so having that agility and the cost effectiveness with your QA processes is going to be really, really important. And Valerie will talk more about this part, but AI is also going to introduce whole types of like novel error categories, right? Like right now we kind of deal with like, the traditional, style, terminology kind of errors. We're going to have, hallucinations, toxic MT, right? Culturally appropriate, inappropriate translations, even things like copyright liability. And that's going to change not just the way companies, enterprises manage quality, but also how translators and linguists plug into this framework.
I would add to this, on top of toxicity, potential toxicity, we'll also be dealing with biases, inherent biases of AI output. And that's another thing. How do you even estimate quality-wise biased content when you don't have a category for it? So it's definitely, there are a lot of new things that are being introduced, equally positive, but some of them can actually be challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So maybe Valerie, you can share with us how do translators fit into evaluation today?
Well, translators are more important than ever, I would say, and our vendor team is really focused on recruiting translators who embrace the technology, who are eager to use it, and we train them on what's expected, of them in this new way to translate. And the highly skilled linguists are more important, as I said, because they're really feeding back into the training the machine and the AI models, and every input that they bring in is going to also sometimes help with those biases that we see in the translation from the models. and making sure that they do play their role of co-pilots. We've been talking about this new way to be a linguist, a translator, who becomes more of a co-pilot to the AI models. And that's true for the translators as well as the evaluators. And we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Andrew, maybe to just share from the customer perspective, you work with a lot of our customers, like what do they share is most important to them today?
Yeah, I think right now, the way we kind of talk to customers about quality is really, through this conversation about content mix in some ways, right? And, what we want to help customers do is understand, if you use this solution on this kind of content, you'll get, this kind of output, right? And how do you achieve the right mix of solutions, right? So that you're getting the most bang for your buck, and you're getting the most, you're achieving your business goals, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what quality is really there to do, is help customers achieve their business goals. um, we think this will probably change over time, right? The content mix strategy may go away, right? As we kind of move to these lower cost AI based solutions, what we're really going to help customers with is quality evaluation, right? Is quality assurance, and making sure that the systems that they put in place to localize content delivers the right output, right? And it's not going to really be a solution based method. It's really going to be what Valerie talked about, having the right human in the loop with the right technology, right, to make sure that the output is at the right level.
Olga mentioned the correlation between the quality of translation and our customers' business outcomes. Andrew, could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, right now, we have, we like to think of ourselves as trusted advisors with our customers, and help them make decisions about how to allocate resources, what solutions to use. And, we have business reviews with our customers when we kind of go through, the traditional metrics, right? Speed, quality, cost. More and more, as we, rely on kind of these AI-based solutions, or entirely AI led solutions, speed and cost are going to become less critical metrics, right? The cost of translation we anticipate is going to go down, and these AI solutions are going to help customers, enterprises scale, right, really rapidly, their deployment of content. And so really quality is going to be the key metric, right, that is going to help customers achieve their business objectives. And attaining the right quality level for certain types of content is going to be really important. And being able to measure, as we talked about earlier, measure quality in a really agile way, and deploy, quality management processes at the right place for the right content to get it to the right quality level, is increasingly be the conversation that providers, localization service providers, localization technology companies are going to be having with customers. And we think as Smartling that we're really well positioned to do that in a variety of ways, not just from like an AI perspective, but also from a solution perspective with technology and services that we can offer customers.
And maybe I could elaborate on that a little bit more. Again, in the world of generative AI and in the world of large language models, there is a capability of tailoring your translation to specific audience. Your first pass, your automated translation to specific audiences, stylistic preferences, and make the translation relevant for that particular audience. Like say that would be in-country ethnic community, or that could be that could be any other audience type. And also LLMs, along the same lines, they also give us the possibility of measuring the suitability and how fit this content actually is for purpose when it comes to speaking to the specific target audience. So A, you can produce the stylistically and culturally relevant translation, and B, you can also measure. And that's another area where generative AI is becoming more and more impactful, measuring another quality dimension of fit for purpose.
And what is really important in what we're doing today is the fact that the quality tools are embedded in our workflow. So we have tools that are able to apply the industry recognized objective evaluation frameworks that are known, by in the industry, MQM, DQF, which are very, very customizable, and every error typology can be really tailored to the customer's needs and specific needs. And the customers can choose their preferred weights. They can look at what is a passing score, what is not passing, depending on their content type. And this is really important because those frameworks that are in place for the traditional way to translate will be able to evolve with the new technologies. We talked about new categories of the errors that need to be introduced. Well, those can be added to the typology that we know today, and they really very well fit into the tools that we have currently to evaluate translation. So that's great because the tools we have will be moving with the technology. And I'm really happy to mention that we've had LQA tools in our platform for a while, but we're working on an improved way to evaluate, which is completely decoupled from the production work. So now we are going to be able to really take content that needs to be evaluated and bring it to the side and run the evaluation without affecting what we've been doing in our production environment. So really what we see is a big change coming in the way we are measuring quality. And that is what Olga is going to talk about next.
So what I wanted to add, Valerie, it's very important that we have introduced arbitration.
Yes.
And within the framework, and it is very important, the data that is used equally for evaluating LQA process in evaluating the quality, but even more so, the data that's needed to train quality estimation models needs to be consistent. And
Yes.
One thing that we're using, Valerie's team is doing, which I think is absolutely fascinating, is making sure that we have arbitration that reaches agreement in the direct assessment and the human annotation, because that produces very consistent and very clean label set alongside the value it presents for our customers.
Yeah, and
Right.
I'll add one thing to that, Olga. What these AI-based solutions also allow us to do in the workflow, before we even get to quality, assurance, is really incorporate in a really sophisticated way customer preferences around style, terminology, persona, right? Industry, specific persona that takes more and more of the I think basic tasks that translators do off their plate, and really allows them to focus on some of the new typologies, for example, that we were talking about.
And Andrew, that would probably be the right place to mention the impact, right? One of the quality evaluation metrics being impact of the content. And
Yeah.
That's another dimension of the quality that we should be very mindful of, right? Not just the linguistic quality, but how it's impactful on our client's business.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So moving in, Olga, I think we'll start with you first, but the question of the very title of this session is, how do we scale up quality management in this AI world with the expectation of doing it at faster speeds and lower cost?
Okay, so the overall idea of automated quality evaluation is probably the top of industry's mind right now. And we are doing quite a bit of research, and we're getting very promising results when it comes to automation of the quality evaluation process. We are in our research right now, we're relying equally to our partners in the language services, to Valerie and Andrew here. We're relying on the MQM framework. But we're also seeing that MQM framework, as we know, it might not be 100% fit for automation of MQM. So we are working on what it would take to produce automated MQM data set. So we provide the starting point for the linguists who are actually performing quality estimation. So that would be very similar to post-editing, right? Or our AIHT workflow, where the human is first fed the output of the machine, to Valerie's earlier point about co-pilots. And we're making very strong progress. Again, it requires training labeled data set And that's something that we're working on, our linguists are working on right now. But once we get there, the aspiration and the North Star is to be able to provide pre-populated area for the linguists to work in where the errors have already been identified for them. There's quite a bit of it happening in the industry right now. There is an auto MQM initiative. We are members of an MQM initiative group, so we're not working in isolation. And we also are in conversations with the MQM committee, the team that actually manages MQM, when we discuss the framework of the MQM and also proposed extensions to the MQM dataset. So the whole idea is being scalable by introducing AI at the LQA step, at the quality assurance step. There are a lot of challenges. I'm not going to say it's super simple. The best thing that we've seen so far is where you allow the model to do the labeling, but then you allow the MQM framework, additional model to actually calculate the scores. But we're definitely on the right path towards it. And I do know that that's going to be a major breakthrough once we've landed it.
And it's certainly going to allow our customers to evaluate more content and have even more assurance that the decisions that they're making about the solutions they're adopting are producing what they're looking for.
Yes, that would also be the path from random sampling to actually LQA across the board, and then sample based on LQA results, right? Because the standard process is you sample the strings randomly or you sample the strings based on certain criteria, and that's the path towards let's LQA everything. Let's do smart LQA. Let's flag problematic areas. And those would be the ones that linguists would need to focus more on.
Yeah, and that goes back to kind of the cost effectiveness of kind of AI based quality assurance, right? And this whole conversation necessitates like this whole linguist evolution and tooling evolution that's going to come with AI based quality assurance, right? So how do linguists work in a CAT tool that allows them to iterate prompts and things like that? So.
Okay, so to round things out for today, I want to just touch on the future state of content. So when you spoke about the content explosion, what does this mean for content quality in the future?
That's actually yet another thing that's top of everybody's mind right now. In the past, it was very easy not to index and to identify machine-generated content, and the framework for this evaluation was very apparent. What do we have now? Equally in the world of images, equally in the world of text, AI content is often almost indistinguishable from human output, yet imperfect. So what do we have right now? We have a potential for search engine results contamination. And again, inaccurate, culturally irrelevant, or product of hallucination content actually making it into the web and subsequently into what is presented to us as the results. So there are a lot of initiatives. For instance, if I'm not mistaken, Google Mind has an initiative going about how do you identify and how do you develop new standards for AI generated content. But yet again, when it comes to quality estimation and content adaptation, human in the loop is still very, very important, right? We still realize that models can do a lot and the boundaries are absolute. There are no boundaries. It's completely infinite. But it's equally obvious that humans are needed both to make sure that model training data is of top-notch quality and also for certain content types, still review, fact check, and evaluate and make sure that we do not have this content contamination factor. The other very interesting thing is in the past, there was a term translate tease, which actually kind of identified areas that are very specific for translation. Then there was a term post-editees, which actually became a scientific term, which was, yes, it sounds fluent, but yet you can still kind of trace traces of post-editing. I'm really curious to see if there will be a term AIEs that would speak about content that is very, very similar to human, yes, yet has those subtle indicators that this content was generated by the machine. And is it even going to impact how we ourselves speak? what is the cross-pollination going to look like? That's a big question between AI generated content, teaching humans how to speak in the new way, and humans teaching AI how to speak in the human way. And where will we land with this? Kelsey, I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thank you. And thank you all again for joining us this year at Global Ready Conference. And we'll see you all soon.